Hello, today I'm going to be making a short video. I'm going to do an inspectional reading of this book here, which is Hidden History, The Secret Origins of the First World War. It's a pretty hefty book, hardback, brand new, just got it this week. So over the next 5-10 minutes, I'm going to quickly have a look at this book, glean some information, and try and figure out whether or not it's worth doing a deeper dive and a closer reading. Okay, so I just had a look at the information on the inside flaps of the book, and on the first page we've got a kind of overview of what this book does, what it's about, and what it tells us. And on the back we've got some information about the authors. This was co-authored by a former head teacher and a former GP. So these guys have abandoned their careers and they've turned to writing big, thick books about history. They are probably going to be coming at this from an angle of detail and reading. I don't suppose you get to be a head teacher or a GP unless you're good at learning and reading and taking in information. It's also cool that they're not academics, they're not historians, they're not affiliated with universities. Sometimes it takes a person who is completely removed and outside of a domain to look in and approach a topic with fresh eyes. And I think that's what they're trying to do in this book. The blurb on the inside cover here is certainly tantalizing because they're telling the reader that they're coming at the First World War in a totally different way than what we are used to thinking about it. They're trying to tell us that the events of the start of World War One, as we've been taught them, are actually incorrect, trapped in a web of falsehood and duplicity, carefully constructed by the victors. I mean, of course, we all know that history is written by the victors, so that seems like a reasonable thing to assert. It says that there's fuse that had been carefully set through a chain of command stretching from Sarajevo to Belgrade and St. Petersburg to that cabal in London. It's a really interesting use of the word that cabal. I'm not quite sure what cabal they are referring to, so I'm interested to keep reading and find out. So it seems to me that, yeah, so far I'm interested to hear what these guys have got to say. I used to be a teacher myself, so I'm happy to hear from a former head teacher. And GPs tend to be people who get into the line of work they're doing because they want to help people, they want to improve health and well-being, which is a humanitarian thing. So I like to kind of assume that these guys are, and the same could be said for teaching, actually, but I like to assume that these guys come from a place of wanting to help people and wanting to do good in the world. So, so far that makes me want to read on. So next I had a look at the first page with the publication information and the acknowledgements section. This book came out in 2013. This is a first edition hardback published in Great Britain, Mainstream Publishing Company. I'm not a big fan of that name of the publishing company. You know, the Mainstream is called that because it's shallow. It's the first time I heard of them as well. I don't know, to my knowledge, I can't think of any other books that have been published by this that I'm aware of, although I've probably got some in my collection somewhere. The dedication is to the victims of unspeakable evil. So it seems like that backs up what I said earlier about a teacher and a doctor and wanting to do something worthy and helpful to the benefit of people. Of course, unspeakable evil is the exact opposite of that. So it sounds like they're writing with good intentions and from a good place. Then I had a quick look at the acknowledgements, and I read through. It's about a page and a half. They talk about the people who have enabled them to put this piece of work together. The challenge of the topic that they're writing about here is that they're treading in the footsteps of people who questioned the official narrative at the time. So the establishment came out with their story about what led to the events of World War One, and some other people were saying, questioning that and challenging it and saying, well, you're leaving things out, or things are missing, or what about this piece of evidence over here? And so they're offering thanks to those people who tread this ground before them. They also name drop Professor Carroll Quigley, the author of Tragedy and Hope. If you don't know who he is or what that book is, that's worth a quick or lengthy internet search. But good to see the name dropped here. He also gives the authors also give special thanks to the people who encouraged them in writing the book, and I thought that was worth mentioning because I'm a big fan of encouragement, a big fan of trying to lift people up and spur them on and trying to get them to outgrow themselves and to take on difficult, challenging things. So it's good that they receive the benefit of that and they acknowledge it. And then there's another bit here that I think stood out. They write, quote, "Apologies are most certainly due to those we buttonholed and quizzed about missing documents, correspondence, and papers at Oxford and Kew Gardens. As we were so correctly reminded, librarians and archivists can only provide access to the material that was passed into the library's safekeeping by the Foreign or Cabinet officers. What was removed, withdrawn, culled, or otherwise destroyed was effected many years ago by those empowered to do so." So it sounds like they were getting into some altercations with librarians for missing documents. If documents are missing that should be there, of course, we don't blame the librarians, and they correctly figure out that there are people who have the power to go in and make these documents and pieces of evidence and artifacts disappear. And I thought that was a nice thing to include in the acknowledgement for any of those poor, beleaguered librarians and archivists who came under fire when these guys were researching the book. That's it really for the acknowledgements. The next thing I'm going to do is have a look through the contents, see what topics are in the book, and then also check out the index. Well, right off the bat, this contents page really makes me want to read this book. Chapter 1 is called The Secret Society. Perfect. The perfect thing to make somebody want to turn that first page and crack on with the book. If you're not interested in secret societies, that's strange to me because secret things are always interesting. What are these people up to that they need to keep it secret and hide it and stop us shining a light on it and find out what they're getting up to? So great first chapter. Then we have other really intriguing topics coming up and words coming up. We've got chapter 3 is the Edward Conspiracy, First Steps and New Beginnings. Then there's some names in here who I've never heard of. Scams and Scandals, chapter 9, always a juicy topic to explore. Chapter 11, we've got Preparing the Empire, Alfred Milner and the Round Table. So this character I don't know too much about, although I've heard of his name. And the Round Table groups I know as a precursor and an early version of some of the organizations and groups of powerful people that still shape the world today. You can trace their origins and history back to this Round Table movement. So I'm pretty happy that that's in here and I get to learn about that. Chapter 12 is Catch a Rising Star and Put It in Your Pocket. No idea what's going to be in that chapter or what it's about. What else we got? Churchill is in here, the Balkan pressure cooker, Sarajevo. Chapter 21 is Deception, Manipulation, and Misrepresentation. Again, more juicy topics and things to learn about. And then chapter 27, this title stood out to me, which is The Speech That Cost a Million Dead. So fantastic title. I have no idea what that could be in reference to or what it's about. And the final part of the book, or of the main text of the book, is the conclusion, which is titled Lies, Myths, and Stolen History. So they've just packed this contents page with words that are intriguing and make me want to learn more and read more. And then another great thing that I learned from the contents is that the last 100 pages of this book are appendices, notes, references, and index. So that's a fair chunk of the book. That's about it's about a quarter of the book actually is just references, which is always a good thing to have in a book. So that's the next thing I'm going to do. I'm going to flip to the back and check out what resources we have there. So I just had a look at the appendices. Appendix 1 is The Secret Elite's Hidden Control and Connections, 1891 to 1914, and it's a diagram. No idea if that's going to come through, but it's pretty detailed. It's got a lot of names on there and lines connecting people. Fascinating to see a one-page overview of, I suppose, what the rest of the book is describing and talking about. This is showing the links between Russia, France, USA, Oxford University, armaments firms, the control of foreign politics, the inner circle, the control of politics, both conservative and liberal, banking, control of South Africa, and foreign office and ambassadors. So that's a pretty valuable page right there, just that one. And then Appendix 2, I haven't seen many books with this before, but Appendix 2 is a list of key players. And so I started having a look through here. And actually, this list is divided into 3 lists. So you've got key list A. So they've divided the key players into 3 groups. Key list A is members and associates of the secret elite. And these are given to us by Professor Quigley, who wrote Tragedy and Hope, mentioned at the beginning. So you've got people such as Albert Edward Saxe-Coburg, King and Emperor of the United Kingdom. Yes, Saxe-Coburg name is very important if you don't know that or haven't heard that before. Arthur Balfour. What else have we got? Winston Churchill, of course. Rudyard Kipling. Cecil John Rhodes, Nathaniel Rothschild, and William Teasdale. These are the names that stood out to me and made me want to learn more. I have a biography of William Teasdale, actually, that I might read for you one day. And then in the key list B is British politicians and writers who were not associated with the secret elite. Key list C is foreign personnel. And the one that I highlighted here is Nicholas II. And this was the last Tsar of Russia. Just an interesting character to me because I was named Nicholas, and I have a number of books on him as well and his family and his latter years, which I'm looking forward to reading. So the appendices have some very important and intriguing crumbs that I'm definitely looking forward to following. The next thing I'm going to look at is the notes and the references. So it's a real amazing resource at the back of this book in the notes and the references sections. Loads of other books and authors and writers whose work I know is very well respected in the field of history. We have got Carroll Quigley. His work is referenced here many, many times. We have got Edward Griffin, Neil Ferguson, who's a very mainstream historian and has lots of thick books about all sorts of topics. One I highlighted was Joan Vion. She has a book, The United Nations Global Straitjacket. I highlighted that because I've been trying to get hold of that. It's pretty expensive and hard to find. Yeah, so it's a great lineup, and most of these references are to books, and so there's books and page numbers in here, which is extremely useful for a book nerd like me who is looking for these references and trying to find how these things overlap and interconnect. Engdahl, A Century of War, his book's referenced here. Milner's Papers. So Milner is a character who I mentioned earlier, a person who I want to learn more about in this book. So that was just a brief skim of the notes and references, Then when we get to the references, they are, as I mentioned in the acknowledgements, they're going to libraries and collections of papers in Oxford and the Bodleian. They're also referring to newspapers and magazines, a big list of those, published articles and pamphlets, a huge list of those. And then there's a bibliography as well. And in this, there are books, some books I have. Christopher Andrews, he writes the official histories of the Secret Services, MI6. I've got his books, but they're also huge and I haven't read them yet. Yeah, and these lists just go on. We've got Winston Churchill's biography is referenced in here, and it just goes on and on. They clearly did their homework, and a lot of reading and research has gone into the preparation of this book. So to my mind, that makes me want to read it even more, and to know that the work and the effort that's gone in here is based on real life evidence and things that are here in existence, and not just kind of making things up and guessing and hypothesizing. They've actually done they've done the legwork. I had a look at the index, and there's some names in here. And what I tend to do when I skim index pages to decide whether or not to buy or read a book, I look for the things that have the most references. So anything that has multiple page numbers in the book referring to it, I tend to take note of. And some of the names that pop out of this index, we've got Arthur Balfour is right there. Who else have we got? I'm struggling to see the highlighter with these yellow glasses. Edward VII, King Edward VII. A lot of references to him. Sir Edward Grey, who I've never heard of. Excuse me. We have also got, well, you kind of get the picture. Alfred Milner, lots of references to him. J.P. Morgan, lots of references to him. Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II. Carol Quigley, bunch of references. Lord Nathaniel Rothschild and 5 or 6 other Rothschilds are in here. And also the round table has quite a number of references too. And we've also got J.D. Rockefeller in here as well, with a bunch of references. So after looking through this index, I can see a lot of names popping out, and I don't know how these names and people relate to the origins of the First World War. If you also are sitting there and you don't know the names of these people, you've never heard them before, then I would humbly suggest that perhaps your understanding of the First World War and how it started may not be accurate, may not be as high resolution as it could be. And so I think after an inspectional reading of this, I would definitely look forward to getting stuck in and reading and investing the time in the meat of the book to get the details and the value from it. So that is my conclusion. I hope this inspectional reading of hidden history was useful for you. Usually when I'm reading a book to kind of get a first impression of it in this way, I would also read the introduction, I would read the conclusion and flick through and just pick out random pages to get a feel of the writing and the style. I don't really have enough time to do that right now. I just wanted to get an overview of what might be contained in here and give that to you, just in case this is a book that you feel like you would like to get a copy of and preserve, put on a shelf, and send it forwards into the future to make sure more people are aware of what's in here, because it seems like pretty important information to me. Okay, thanks for watching. That's me. I'll see you again on the next one.